The much anticipated Companies and Allied Matters Bill that has passed through so many legislative scrutiny has finally been laid to rest with the signing of the bill into an act by President Muhammadu Buhari to give impetus to the implementation of the act. Glad you could join us on this week's edition of The Portfolio on NTA News 24. I'm Chimobi Walter Naji, and this week, as you will know, we'll x-ray the contents of the Companies and Allied Matters Act and how it will affect the business environment. And we'll introduce our guests shortly, but not after we take the business news segment with Comfort Amodu to stay with us.
Many thanks, Chimobi. Now, President Muhammadu Buhari signed the instrument of accession of the agreement for establishment of the African Trade Insurance Agency. The agreement and the agency, which are registered with the Secretariat of the United Nations, is in tandem with the Charter of the United Nations. Ensures equal methods for revenue sharing across the three tiers of government of the Federation. The federal government says it will continue to evolve ways of achieving a balanced formula. Chairman Indices and Disbursements Committee Revenue, Mobilization Allocation and Fiscal Commission, Chris Akumas, gave the indication at a meeting with the leadership of the Office of the Surveyor General of the Federation.
We always go for update. Just a confirmatory information of what is current, so that in the process of review, we'll use informed information to enable us to make informed recommendation that will lead to the Commission coming out with an informed decision.
The thing we are going to achieve in the future over this collaboration is that we will be able to give them a better indices material that is going to assist them to do their job better and serve Nigeria more.
And also, government is taking steps to revive moribund agricultural facilities across the country to ensure food security. Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development Sabo Nanono noted this during the distribution of agricultural palliatives to farmers in Imo State. And small and medium enterprises in the country are also receiving attention, with government working towards restructuring SME loans. The Vice President, Yemi Oshibajo, said the federal government is working with the Central Bank of Nigeria to assist borrowers to restructure the loans as part of efforts to ease the impact of COVID-19 pandemic. This, key players say, is a welcome development as it will aid SMEs restructure the loans they've taken.
Coronavirus has really affected the economy because most businesses are crumbling, most businesses are closing, but some that have continued to persevere are trying and putting in their best.
A lot of SMEs also, those that have the rights requirements, actually made this fund because these funds come to them at a cost lesser than a commercial credit structure. So all in all, what we do is ensure that we help them access these monies while ensuring that we put proper risk management processes in place, which we have, to ensure that the risk that they might have, that they would not see, we will see it and be able to mitigate against it while meeting our objectives.
And that's the news for now. The portfolio continues with Chimobi. Many thanks for watching.
Welcome back. The last Companies and Allied Matters Act was enacted in 1990, and since then efforts have been made to repeal the act. However, after 30 years, President Buhari signed the amended Companies and Allied Matters Bill recently passed by the National Assembly to look into this act and how it affects businesses in Nigeria. We earlier had a chat with the Registrar General, Corporate Affairs Commission, Garba Abubakar. Here is a look at the excerpts. Just a few days ago, the President signed the Companies and Allied Matters Act into a bill, into an act. beg your pardon, after so many years. What is the implication of this?
Thank you so much for that question. As you know, that is the principal legislation governing the operations of business entities in Nigeria. All companies, business names, and even associations that are registered to operate as not-for-profit comes within the purview of that law. It's a very significant legislation. And as you rightly observed, the law that has been repealed was enacted in 1990. And since that time, there had not been any significant change until now. Company law has moved beyond anybody's imagination. Countries have changed their laws 4 or 5 times within this period. But for us in Nigeria, we have just done that. And it will boost the investment climate, and it will ensure that these companies are better managed, and it has provided for greater disclosures by companies to boost the economy. And for us as regulators, we have a better framework to regulate the operations of these businesses.
All right, so looking at the Act in itself, what exactly, makes the Act different from the last one we had? And then moving forward, what are we expecting with implementation?
Thank you. The Act is different from the repealed law because this new law has 870 sections as opposed to 612 sections in the former law. The law is divided into 7 parts as against 4 parts in the former law. And we have 167 new provisions, completely new, while 91 provisions were modifications of some of the former provisions of the repealed Act. So there are so many areas this thing has touched, right from the right to form a company and the minimum number of persons that can form a company. Under the former law, to register a company under Part A of the repealed Act, the applicant has to get a legal practitioner to depose to a declaration that the requirements of the law have been complied with. And that declaration must accompany the application for registration. That is no longer a requirement. What the new law has done is to provide for statement of compliance by one of the directors. This will actually reduce the cost of doing business because an applicant doesn't have to go to a lawyer to pay the lawyer to do that declaration, and he doesn't have to involve a lawyer in the incorporation process. The second issue relates to minimum number of persons that can register a company. Under the former law, to register a limited liability company, you require minimum of 2 persons, both as directors and as shareholders. With the new law, 1 person can register a company, and that company will have a separate legal existence from that person, and it will have perpetual succession. So this will address all the challenges that were being encountered by persons that had registered companies with 2 persons. Because in most cases, you will discover that the second person was nominally included to satisfy the requirements of the law. In actual sense, he doesn't participate in the running of the business. He doesn't even contribute for the shares. His name was just put there to satisfy this legal requirement. So an individual now on his own, singularly, can register his own company, and that company will have a separate legal existence, and that company can continue in perpetuity. Another aspect of the reform deals with the issue of share capital. Under the repealed law, a company can have an authorized share capital, which means you can have some shares that you may decide not to issue. The repeal law provides that at least 25% of the shares must be issued. So which means you can warehouse 75%. What this new law has provided is that all the shares must be issued at the point of registration. So the question of warehousing any share does not even arise. So companies don't need to have capital in their books if they don't have any need for those capital. They are at liberty to increase the share capital at any time. So you register and issue all the shares at the point of registration. When you know, if you want to increase, then you increase. After the increase, you must also allot everything. So this has also addressed that concern about the issue of warehousing of shares. Another issue that is very fundamental has to do with disclosure of persons with significant control. This refers to beneficial owners of companies. As you may know, the various anti-corruption initiatives of the government has brought to fore the need to know the ultimate beneficiaries of these companies, because there are instances where companies were incorporated using names of persons that didn't even know how these companies were being run. The benefit actually goes to people that are not even on the record of the entity in the registry. So because of global concern and in line with our open government partnership commitments, as well as the extractive industry transparency international commitments, and the pronouncement made by Mr. President at the London Anti-Corruption Summit in 2016, that Nigeria will establish a register of beneficial ownership. This has now been given effect by these provisions that provides for mandatory disclosure of persons with significant control. We decided to adopt the UK model of persons with significant control as against the narrow definition of beneficial owners. So the person with significant control will deal with anybody that has share capital threshold or voting right threshold of up to 5%, or somebody that controls the appointment of majority of the directors, or somebody on whose direction the directors are accustomed to act. So, which means even a shadow director will fall within the definition of a person with significant control. And disclosure has to be made by the company. Immediately that person qualifies as such, and whenever the company is filing annual return. And one thing about the register of significant control is it will be publicly available. Any member of the public can access information at no cost based on our commitments in the OGP and the EITI. So this is a very significant achievement because it has actually closed the chapter of non-conformity in relation to our OGP commitments, the EITI commitment, even the FATF, the Financial Action Task Force commitment, the 40-plus recommendation of the Financial Action Task Force provides for mandatory disclosure of beneficial ownership. We've not been able to achieve that because the enabling legal framework was not available. With this new Cama, that gap has been addressed. Other issues relate to public companies, the issue of directors of public companies. The law now requires that every public company must have a minimum of 3 independent directors. And the law has also stipulated the qualification of an independent director. This is necessary because by calling it public, it means any member of the public can own shares in that company. Members of the public, when they own shares, they should be interested in how these companies are governed.
Let's talk about ease of doing business. You've spoken so much about the EITI regulations and how it affects the new Cama Act and all of that. But let's talk about the ease of doing business. I mean, Nigeria, through the PBEC, has been doing a lot in trying to encourage and enlarge the ease of doing business in Nigeria. How does this affect?
Thank you so much. The ease of doing business is actually has three key parameters. 1, the time it takes to register. 2, the cost of registration. And 3, the processes that one has to undergo to register. What the new law has done is actually to collapse some of these processes. I have mentioned the issue of statutory declaration by a legal practitioner. This is no longer a requirement. So the person submitting the application, the first director, can simply sign a statement of compliance that the requirement of the law has been complied with. So you don't need any third party, whether professional or otherwise, to certify that this requirement has been fulfilled. On the issue of costs, our process is evolving because most countries have a flat fee for registration. These are countries that have even eliminated the requirement for share capital registration at the point of registration. But our journey has to be gradual. We are not ripe for that kind of revolutionary provisions in Nigeria. So we still maintain minimum share capital threshold. At least at a glance, people should know the share capital of a company. So we still have that requirement. But over the years, Cama had actually reduced these fees. If you are registering any company that has a share capital below 500 million, you are paying only 50% of the cost. If you are registering with a share capital threshold above 500 million, for the subsequent fees above 500 million, you enjoy 25% discount in addition to the 50% that you have enjoyed for share capital below 500 million. These are significant reductions to ensure that we operate in line with global standards. Other issues on ease of doing business has to do with even disclosure requirements by these companies. Small companies are now exempted from mandatory annual audit of their books. They are exempted from filing financial statements with the CAC, because the issue we are going to look at is to harmonize the provisions of this new law with the provisions of the Finance Act in relation to the threshold of turnover for small companies. Because the law says, the new Cama says, a company is qualified as a small company if it has a turnover of not more than 2 million or 10 million, or net asset of not more than 5 million, or any amount, any other threshold that may be set by the Commission. And such a company should not have foreign participation and government shouldn't have any interest. And the directors among themselves should own majority of these shares. So these companies are qualifies as a small company, and it is exempted from audit. What we are going to do immediately the bill is gazetted is to issue a regulation that will align the turnover threshold with what is contained in the Finance Act.
Sorry, sir. I'm sure that because of the positioning of the CAC, that gazetting of this law is not going to be far-fetched from now. But how has this empowered the CAC in ensuring implementation, one, ensuring monitoring, of this law to ensure that all the basic strategic partners also comply with this new law?
Thank you. I think the best way to actually implement this law is to have a robust technology. Because with technology, you can achieve anything. We've seen what other jurisdictions have done. As of today, any information you require on any company in the UK is available free of charge. You just go to companies.gov.uk, you get it free of charge. Ours may not be free, but for a fee, customers should be able to do their transactions and should be able, any member of the public or anybody should be able to obtain information from CAC electronically. And filings will be made electronically. We are working assiduously to have an end-to-end electronic solution that will make it possible for every registered entity to do its own transaction with CAC directly without even having to come to CAC. You can sit in your house or in your office, file your returns, change your directors, register your company without having to come to CAC. This is what we are looking at. And once you have that robust application, it's very easy for you to know the level of compliance by entities. You can easily query the application to know the number of companies that have filed returns, those that have no filed returns, the companies that have changed their directors, those that have not submitted their financial statements, even the threshold of turnover threshold of companies. And we have classification of companies based on different classes, whether they are general trading, whether they are manufacturing. So once you query that class, anything you want to know, you can easily know it. What we are looking at is to have an extensible business reporting language for our financial statements that will be filed, moving forward, that will be filed with CAC. So we are working assiduously. We've been doing this work. We didn't wait for the law to be signed. All these strategies, we've been working on them, and we're hoping that between now and the end of the year, we'll have an appropriate technological solution that will make the enforcement of this law very easy.
Right, this very final question. Does this have any relationship with the CAC's efforts in, formalizing the informal sector?
Yes, the formalization of the informal sector is an ongoing process. We are collaborating with different agencies. If you had read the report by there was a study that was done, and it came out that there are over 5 million entities that have not formalized. We are collaborating with SMIDAN, the Small and Medium Development Agency. We are collaborating with our supervising ministry and other stakeholders to make sure that all informal businesses register, because if you do not register, it's difficult to verify your information. And you may have two individuals with identical names. You wouldn't know who you are dealing with. But if your information is available in a register that can be verified, at least anybody that wants to deal with you will be more comfortable, because he knows that it's not just you. You may be an imposter if your details are not there. But if you are recorded in the register, you can easily verify to know that, look, this is Mr. A, who is in the business of poultry, whose address is at so place, and your identity will be there. CSC wouldn't just register you without knowing your identity. So these are some of the things. As I said, this will be a collaborative effort. CSC cannot do it alone. If not for this pandemic, we'll have continued with our roadshows, because over the years we've been doing roadshows, we've been collaborating with market associations, we visit markets, we do roadshows, we do registration, instant registration in markets, trade fairs, and other public gatherings. So we'll continue. Immediately the lockdown is completely eased, we'll revive some of these initiatives and make sure that we formalize most of these businesses that are operating in the informal sector, because there are a lot of benefits. You won't be able to access any finance if you are not in any publicly available register. And there are interventions now from the federal government, from state governments. We are seeing more registration now for business names, which indicates that more people are coming to formalize their registration.
Welcome back. That's it for this week, but do join us again next week for another episode of the program where we look at trends in businesses, economies, and global finances. Till then, keep those comments coming through our social media handles. I'm Chimobi Walter Naji. To have yourself a pleasant week.